Thank you so much for attending our program today. My name is Allison Hughes, and I'm part of the program planning and outreach team here at NC State University Libraries. And I'm so glad you've joined us for our second event this semester in the Campus History Series. The libraries and its partners are working to ensure that our programs are welcoming and affirming for everyone involved. That means that everyone, from event organizers to attendees, has an important role to play in contributing to a respectful and positive environment. That's why we ask you to reflect on the way you pose comments and questions in the chat to ensure that they do not harm other participants. When we speak, the impact of our words is just as important as our intent. Today, we ask that you engage in this program with exploration and curiosity while being kind and intentional with your words for the sake of our community. During the presentation, we ask that you remain muted. If you have any questions or memories you would like to share, please place them in the chat and we'll collect them for a question and answer session after the presentation. I'd like to now hand things off to Dale Cousins, who is a member of our Friends of the Library.
Hello, everybody. As Allison said, my name is Dale Cousins, and I'm on the board of directors for the Friends of the North Carolina State University Libraries. On behalf of the Friends, I'd like to welcome you to our second program of the Campus History Series this semester. It's amazing to me to think we're talking about history and the Centennial campus together. It seems like just yesterday it all happened. If you are interested in continuing to engage with our cutting edge library and its programs and services, I would encourage you to become a friend. We host a variety of events and programs throughout the year and work to raise money to support the success of students all over campus. To learn more about our philanthropic organization, please check the link in the chat and come on down. We'd love to have you. Please enjoy the program today.
Thank you, Dale. And now I'd like to hand things off to the Alumni Association.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrea Sellers. I am the Assistant Director for Regional Engagement with your NC State Alumni Association. I want to thank you all for joining us today and give a special thank you to the Alumni Association members. Your support helps us to fund and provide programs like this, both virtually and in person. Thank you so much for joining us. And now back over to you, Allison.
Thank you. And now let's introduce our speakers. Don Kranbuehl is an award-winning architect with over 20 years of experience in the design of academic, science and technology, and civic project types. Don is passionate about the relationship between architecture and its site and creating design solutions that respond to the climate, natural and build context, and public realm. Since 2007, Don has served as a professor of practice at the NCSU College of Design, teaching architecture studios which focus on the relationship of the environment and site to building form and tectonics. Shane Rushing has focused his career on the design, management, and construction of higher education and civic projects. His design leadership has been instrumental in creating places that reflect and advance the mission and identity of those institutions. Shane served as Senior Design Architect for NC State University James B. Hunt Junior Library in collaboration with Snowhetta. He most recently completed Fitts-Woolard Hall on Centennial campus. He is a regular critique and lecturer at NC State University's College of Design, where he holds both a Bachelor of Architecture and a Bachelor of Environmental Design. And now I'd like to hand things off to our presenters.
Don, I think you're muted.
Trying to find my screen now. It's not showing up. Oh. Oh. Sorry about that. Well, let me just thank everybody. We're thrilled to be here and honored to be a part of this discussion. Shann and I have been working at NC State for a long time on their campus, and we're just thrilled to be sharing some of the projects that Clark Nexsen has done over the past, I guess, about 15 years. As was said already, I have taught at the College of Design for a number of years, and it's just always been super exciting to be a part of a campus design. So today, what we're going to be talking about is how architecture can create community and connectivity through design. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be splitting this into kind of two sections. I'm going to be talking about projects that our firm's worked on the North Campus, and Shann's going to be talking about projects on Centennial Campus. It just kind of worked out pretty nicely that we can split it in these two ways. I started back in 2005, and we were working on the North Campus at that time, and it's been a nice chronological sequence of events that have ended our most recent projects on Centennial with the Hunt Library and Fitts-Woolard. But I thought I'd talk briefly about, the importance of campus design, starting with, these two campuses for NC State on the North Campus and Centennial. As you know, the North Campus, it's right by Hillsborough Street, and there's, some separation between these two campuses. But what the master plan has really done a great job is looking at what are the relationships between these different parts of the campus and how do we create connections. So interestingly enough, I think a lot of our architectural design solutions really start with a master plan kind of perspective, and it really starts with an understanding of the campus paths and open spaces. I'm going to shrink this. The campus paths and open spaces, and we really think about how the buildings interact with these two key elements, how they strengthen the paths and strengthen and reinforce the public spaces. It's not too surprising that the public spaces are typically dotted and emphasized with landmarks and public art. As you continue on in the master plan, natural systems are a critical part of this. And as architects, we're always interested in how do we look at the macro scale of things in terms of the climate and the building's response to the climate, as well as the kind of local environmental issues of topography and local systems of climate and water, rainwater. In terms of a campus, it's always interesting to look at how buildings provide different functions. And similarly, we think about buildings themselves and as having a mixed use component. So we think about how do you use the program to engage public spaces. Transit paths are critical and obviously connected to this concept of how paths connect different aspects of a campus. So with that being said, I think it's interesting to look at how the master plan is looking at architecture, and what it does a great job is talking about how buildings are thought of as parts of a neighborhood. So there's a connection to the overall campus, and then also the connection to the neighborhood in which they're in. And what these neighborhoods are really defined by are the streets and the public paths. And you'll see kind of a glimpse of what's to come in the presentation at the end of Stenson Drive is the two buildings we're going to be talking about today, and that's Park Shops and Sass Hall. Another key aspect is the character of these places and the hearths and the landmarks. You see some of our buildings there, parking deck, and the significant historical elements, and how do you grab onto the character of the historical elements in the buildings themselves. Another interesting part of the design of any kind of NC State building is its understanding of base, middle, and top. And as any architects worked on the campus, they are always very familiar with this concept of how the building touches the ground, and then what is the kind of middle section, the kind of architectural fenestration that gives windows and transparency, engages the facade to the public realm. And then at the top, how does the top of a building connect to the sky? How does it create an interesting connection to the natural environment? And then finally, the entrance is another key aspect of any of our projects. Is how do you create engaging entrances that allow the public to flow in and be a part of the building in a very strong connection to the inside, but also looking back to the campus. So we always think about our public spaces as key elements of creating, lively space, great circulation between different floors, and then also creating views. And in the bottom right, you'll see something to come. So that's SAS Hall, which we've worked on. So I'm going to start by talking about the North Campus, and pardon the graphic, but this is the best kind of aerial we could get at this point. You see the bell tower there, and then the kind of historic campus along Hillsborough Street. At the center of the screen is SAS Hall and Park Shops. And what's interesting is, the history of this campus goes way back to the 1800s. So it's interesting to see what it was like, before it's become so built out. So if you see in the middle, it's interesting to see the football stadium there at the end of Stenson Drive, and our project, SAS Hall, was at the end of that Stenson Drive, and Park Shops also forms the other ending to that street. So, when we started this project, SAS Hall in 2005, there were still remnants of the football field, elements of the building that were there. And so the question is, how do you really make the most of the ending of a street? How does it become a termination and a new public space? So SAS Hall, this is the view from that the west side, looking down the end of Stenson Drive. It's about 120,000 square feet, and this houses the math and statistics departments through the generous donation of SAS and Goodnight. We were able to do this wonderful building that really activates this Stenson Drive and creates a new public space. So it was largely about how does the building frame the public space. And we start off our projects with looking at a really good site plan and thinking about how can the buildings form, not just create internal spaces, but really frame external spaces. So we talk about the kind of residual space or positive space that's left over from the building footprint. And we looked at a number of different configurations, and with the University Architect's Office, we ended up deciding on this L-shaped plan that really kind of mirrors and is a kind of a symmetrical relationship to the old Park Shops building there. And that helped really kind of frame this new hearth of the neighborhood. So the building's plan then really kind of is an extension of that general geometric party. And what you see here in the plans is an organization that really tries to make the most of the program to help activate that public space. So all of the classrooms were put on that main floor as you enter the building. Offices were lifted up off of the floor, that main floor, but the bottom two floors are the most public. So when you enter into this space, you're really greeted with the most active participants and users of the building. So we always think about buildings in section just as much as in plan, and thinking about how the building engages the ground plane, how the vertical circulation can allow people to see the spaces that they just came from and see the spaces they're about to go to. We often use kind of cues of walls like this accent wall of wood to help direct students down into this kind of main hearth space. Bridges that kind of come through and really help activate the space. A view from the north looking back at SAS Hall, I think shows that the real depth and layering of the wall systems. We really try to make buildings become layered planes and layered volumes that help create wonderful indoor-outdoor spaces. You'll see the entrances at the bottom floor there that are carved out to help define that entrance. And then there's also the canopy that helps lead students and faculty to the main entrance. You have to really think about how to respond to the context of the North Campus, and brick is obviously a really important element, but we felt at the end of Stenson Drive, we really wanted to make a really nice kind of transparent ending that almost allowed people to feel like it continued on through. So this was the curtain wall design that we developed that really is not just a simple pane of glass, but it's a multiple layered series of aluminum planes and volumes that really respond to the sun and create interesting shadow patterns. So when you finally get to the heart space, it really is a nice space to be in, with views down to the east and back up to the west of Stinson Drive, and public art becomes a really critical element. Inside, you've got classroom spaces. It's I think a 200 seat or 120 seat auditorium. And then kind of the final view of this project shows, you know, it's really about the neighborhood and starting to frame a relationship between Park Shops and SAS Hall, and creating the space between those two. Still, you know, there's a lot of discussion about the circulation through the site and whether we could kind of make this a separate plaza that's just for pedestrians, but vehicular circulation, as you saw from the campus plan, it's really important to have that connectivity through campus. So that became an interesting element to design around, but still allows the space between the two buildings to become a great space for students. So the next project we want to talk about is Park Shops, and this was a project that we were working on at the same time as we were doing SAS Hall, and it was a really wonderful opportunity to have this neat dialogue of old and new. And if any of you are familiar with Park Shops, if you were there before the renovation, it's always interesting for people that have seen it before to see it after, because before it really was the building that kind of housed everything under the kitchen sink, as some people might say. But it's turned into a classroom building, a lab building, as well as student advising offices, the long distance learning center, Delta, as well as academic office suite for the dean, a dean suite. So really interesting opportunity to look at how to make an old masonry shell be transparent and put learning on display. So this is the new entrance of the west facade. So I was fascinated working on this project, looking back at some of the old archives. I went to the library actually, and was really greeted with great resourcefulness from the librarian there, and she was quick to show me where the oldest photos of the project were located. And it was neat to find this photograph. As I was telling Shann, this might have been the earliest Photoshop job at NC State. You see some kind of doctoring of the photo, but that's Park Shops. You see Leazer Hall to the left, Court of Carolina to the right. You know, NC State is wonderful in that it has this strong connection to agricultural mechanics, started back as a land grant university. So this project became a really important symbol, I think, for the University Architect's Office, to make sure that the history of mechanical trades was celebrated in the architecture and the historical architecture itself. So it's neat to see this building in its site. Back then, classrooms were very different. I mean, this was the class in Park Shops, and you see very different types of students and the types of activities they were learning. All mechanical trades, steel, welding, fabrication jobs. Even though it's a very different classroom setting than today, it still had the bones, as the university saw, of creating great learning spaces. And that is because of high base, wonderful natural light, really durable materials. And so the question was, how do you take this old building and make it into something that's suitable for the 21st century learning that NC State is in now? So another classroom shot, very different. So when we started this project, the Park Shops, many people thought it should be torn down. But as I've said before, it's had the bones of creating a wonderful campus space. Its L-shaped configuration complemented the SAS Hall L-shaped plan to really help define this plaza. So the question was, how do you turn this kind of back of a building, really a service building, into a new suitable 21st century plaza defining building? If you've been in Park Shops before, this was the view you might have had. It was all covered up with drywall. You really had no sense of, a lot of the daylight was covered up. You had no sense of the character of the place, the brick, and the quality of this old industrial construction. So one of the challenges was really, how do you take a floor plan? From 1914, it was very open. 2005, when we got the project, it was very filled with as many different uses as you can imagine. And one of the first things we thought about was, how do you create clarity and order to allow students to find their way through this? At this point in time was pretty much a somewhat of a disorienting kind of architectural space. So one of the key elements that we thought about was creating order and clear circulation. So these two public paths really helped define the layout of the building. We looked at creating carves and punctures through these old masonry walls, and looked at opening up floors to bring in daylight, and opening up floors to put in new vertical circulation to connect an upper level and a lower level. Another big strategy was, how do you take the kind of drywall world that it was, hiding all of the masonry, and reveal that? So one of the first steps was taking all that off, bringing back the character, sandblasting the painted ceilings, and bringing back the character of that old wood industrial architecture, which really became a feature of the building. So the site plan was really important in thinking about, how do you take public paths and bring those into the building. So what you're seeing here on the right is the new west entrance and the new plaza entrance. So the building is really about taking an interior renovation and making it a part of the campus. A new canopy was added to the back, and I'll talk about that in a second, to help activate that plaza. So these two campus paths were thought about from an architectural standpoint, and how do you give cues to students and faculty to find these entrances? So it's largely about defining wayfinding in a sense, as well as celebrating the contrast between the old and new. So each of the paths was demarcated with a very highly refined architectural feature in a sense. So either a stair and plane that always had joints between the old and new, and that was celebrated either with a space and shadow, or sometimes light, or maybe it's a wood material that stops short of the masonry wall. But it was always about finding a nice dialogue between old and new. So that back of house building, the service entrance, now had to become the new front door. So we put a new steel and glass enclosed pavilion, which now houses seating for the cafe, as well as putting in a new stair that helps take students up to the heart of the building, in a sense, or the heart of the building. I was calling it the brains, actually. The heart was the cafe, but the brain is, if we're using the anatomical terminology, was the classes. So the stair took students up to that. So the location of that was really important in defining that as an architectural feature. The classrooms were also celebrated in terms of showcasing the old and new. And so these kind of new planes that helped both hide mechanical ductwork, as well as improve the acoustics, and really help create a backdrop to that old steel structure and highlight the wood ceiling. So these classrooms are now, obviously very different than they were back in the 1914 when the building was built. And it creates a nice transparency. The old doors into these classrooms are now translucent glass, which allows the learning to be on display. That vertical circulation was put in at the heart of the building to help activate the plaza, as well as bring students up. And that became this kind of feature at the core of the building. And you see that south elevation with the canopy and the path behind it through this very kind of interesting architectural combination of industrial buildings. Bringing in daylight was really important in thinking about how you remove floors. So the putting in the stair actually allowed the removal of that floor to bring in daylight deeper into the space. So as you enter in from the plaza, you get this kind of nice indoor-outdoor space. Then coming into the building, the stair greets you. At the ground floor, we had to be really efficient in terms of using as much space as we could. But the ground floor helps activate the plaza with a tutorial center, as well as the long distance learning, and then the cafe at the adjacent space right beside the plaza. As you go up a floor, all the classrooms are underneath the clear story, so that's on the left side. Offices flank the plaza, so they get views of the plaza, and to the north you have the archaeology spaces. We removed a significant portion of the top floor to allow this clear story light to bring in daylight and this new projecting balcony from a dean's office. So on the top floor, again, that was really filled with hardly recognizable spaces, and now it's organized very cleanly around these trusses that are flanked by planes and light that celebrates that joint and allows the trusses to fly through. And I think the clear story light is still brought into this interior corridor by having this additional layer of glazing inside the corridor. So the classrooms, great high bay spaces, clean, simple, and totally transformed for the 21st century. It's really about the public spaces and how do you create wonderful character places for students to gather, whether it's at the base of a stair, underneath, beside a wood wall, or in cafe seating looking out. But I think what's nice about this renovation is it creates many different ways for students to interact. So the project is largely about details and old and new, but I'd also say most importantly, it's about how do you create public space that creates places for students and faculty to interact. And with that, Shann, I hope I left you enough time there. I'm going to turn it over to Shann. I'll stop sharing. We'll do questions and answers afterwards, I guess.
Thanks, Don.
Hopefully you can be quicker with the draw than I was trying to find my PowerPoint.
Well, let's see. Okay. Can you all see my screen?
Yeah, just gotta put it in presentation mode.
All right, here we go. So we're going to head over to Centennial campus. Don did a great job talking about North Campus and the character of the older buildings there. Centennial campus is a much newer campus precinct. It was established in 1984 as a public-private research park and academic campus that was part of a shift of land from Dorothea Dix to NC State to create this new park. It houses 75 university centers, institutes, and departments anchored by engineering, textiles, agriculture, and life sciences. In addition to the academic spaces or academic programs, it also houses both university and private housing. There's a hotel and a golf course there, an alumni center. The new chancellor's residence is located there, as well as K-12 academic buildings. It's interesting, if you're familiar with main campus or North Campus, the kind of propensity of brick on campus is one that many people are aware of. That can kind of continues as a primary material on Centennial campus as well. So this is a master plan view of Centennial campus, and you can see, the bottom of the page shows the golf course, the alumni center kind of surround on the south side of Lake Raleigh, which is right in the middle of the screen. And then all of the academic and research buildings are north and northeast of the lake. We're going to focus on a couple of buildings that are right at the heart of campus. There's a primary outdoor, oval. It's called the oval. It's the primary main lawn that's right at the heart of campus, and two buildings to the west of that our firm was part of. One being Fitts-Woolard Hall, and the other being James V. Hunt Jr. Library. So we'll talk about these two buildings and kind of I think it'll be interesting to see some themes continuing to emerge that are similar across all 4 of these projects that we've talked about. So Fitts-Woolard Hall is the newest building to be completed on Centennial campus. It houses engineering departments, and it actually is the culmination of the College of Engineering's move from main campus to Centennial campus. It was just completed this year. There's 4 levels. It's approximately 230,000 square feet. It houses the civil construction environmental engineering department, as well as the industrial systems engineering department. Also has the dean's suites on the top floor. And one of the key components or concepts for the building was this notion or this idea of engineering on display. If many of you or any of you were kind of familiar with Mann Hall or Daniels Hall on North Campus, those are the 2 buildings that the 2 departments were coming out of. And they're early 20th century buildings, which means they're not very transparent, both to the exterior or interior. And a lot of these, or all of these research spaces and teaching spaces were all behind opaque walls and doors. So this kind of sense that you never really knew what was happening inside the building and all the great research that was occurring behind these closed doors. And so working with the departments, this idea of kind of revealing all of that work and all of that experimentation and analysis and research, bringing that out and displaying it to the campus community and visitors that may come to the building. And the way that we conceived of this engineering on display being manifested in the building was to really kind of organize it around a central circulation path. And that circulation path is, as Don said, is kind of a continuation of circulation from the site and then through the threshold and entry of the building, and then continuing horizontally and vertically inside the building. So it's really important to think about what kind of laboratory spaces could be put on display. I mean, some of the researchers were very adamant about not kind of being transparent and open and visible, and others were, embrace that idea. But it was really important to find the types of research spaces that were really, interesting and could help enliven and activate the interior and the exterior of the building. So this is just a sampling of a few of those. And really beginning with the entry into the building, there are two main entries, one at the north end and one at the south end. This is looking at the south entry, and organizing lab spaces around those entries was kind of the first key component in establishing this engineering on display path and helping to enliven the entry and bring people into the building. And then once inside the building, it was then about enlivening the hallways and the vertical circulation, organizing these lab spaces around those circulation components, and then bringing natural light deep into the building. These buildings are really, really big. I mean, each floor plate is over 50,000 square feet. And so you can imagine being inside a building like that doesn't have any natural light penetrating into the building. So it's really important to use skylights and views horizontally out of the building to bring daylight deep into these really big floor plates. So this is a video that we worked with the College of Engineering to develop. It was used as a marketing tool. They actually had to raise half of the $100 million for this building.
This is more than bricks and mortar. This is not just a funding that goes in to build a building. It is really the key to supporting and providing the infrastructure for our faculty and our students and our staff.
We are so excited about the Fitts-Woolard Hall. This will promote interdisciplinary work because co-location of people from different disciplines really enables them to work together.
I'm working this hard on this design for the faculty in their 20s and 30s that we just hired that will have a career in a new building with modern labs and appropriate spaces. The building we're building today will have an impact on students who aren't even born in 2018.
Private support is absolutely essential for the work that professors and universities do to educate students, develop research ideas, and continue to be at the cutting edge of research education and industry.
One might think that when you get a gift like this that gets you that much closer, people would all of a sudden, well, I think there is a breath or a sigh of relief. Oh, it looks like we're really going to make this happen. But it isn't like anybody's taking their foot off the pedal. On the contrary, the message I have for the alumni that we still feel can help us with this, and by the way, there's over 300 alumni that have already made commitments that have helped support this building. But the message to all the other alumni is, come on in and be part of this before it's too late.
All right. So obviously that was prior to the building being completed, a lot of renderings, but I think it's interesting to be able to kind of compare and contrast those initial images to what was completed. I think we were pretty successful in bringing, the vision of the project to life. So as we talked about earlier, Don talked about earlier before, campus paths are really important in creating community on a campus. It's also important, in our mind, to bring those paths into the building and really engage users and students and faculty with one another through the architecture of the building. Again, there are two main entries to this project. One, the upper right image shows the Partners Way entry. That's on level 1, and then the image on the right is the oval entry on level 2. And those two main entries are tied together by the circulation path that we describe as being the engineering on display path. So looking at that south entry plaza from Partners Way, you see Partners Way on the left side. The oval is over to your right. The entry plaza is kind of down, mid image, and then the entry to the building is straight ahead with the structural testing lab being lit up on the left. A lot of transparency is important both inside and outside to reveal the labs that are inside the building. It's also important in bringing natural light into the building. This is a view inside that structural testing lab, and you can see directly into this space as you're walking up to that main entry. You can also see it as you drive by or ride by on Partners Way. So as you initially enter the building, you're presented with this large structurally expressive stair and a large wood wall, and then all of this natural daylight coming down from skylights above. Vertical views up and through the building, and then lab spaces surround this lobby, one of which is the driving simulator lab. This is used for studying roadway design within the CCEE department. On the other side of the lobby space, there's a student projects lab. And this is used primarily by students within the CCEE department to work on their capstone projects at the end of the year. This is right next to the main entry, so it really enlivens and activates and engages visitors to the building with the students and the research and activities that are going on inside. So we'll go up to the oval entry, and again here, we talked about earlier, trying to activate both entries with labs. At the south end, we had the structural testing lab. Here at the oval entry on the north end, we located the large advanced manufacturing lab right next to that. And you can see the transparency both in and out. Again, really trying to engage the research that's going on inside the building, engage that with the greater campus. And that's right along a major pedestrian path. As you enter the building, you can see the advanced manufacturing lab on the right, another student project lab next to that. And again, another one of these large structurally expressive stairs and wood walls. And those wood walls and stairs are really the primary organizing elements in the building. They provide clear circulation up and down in the building. They provide daylight and warmth inside the circulation spaces. And there's also another wood wall that connects those two stairs together. And along those wood walls, that's where we have the engineering on display path. So the building, the first two floors are primarily lab spaces and classroom spaces. The upper two floors, predominantly faculty and grad student offices and collaboration spaces, as well as some computational labs. So just some views of that interior space. Again, Don mentioned the idea of hearth earlier. That's a consistent theme in NC State buildings. This is the hearth on the second floor at Fitts-Woolard. Classrooms are to the left and lab spaces are to the right. One of those labs is the ergonomics lab, and you can see through those windows out into the hearth space. So there's that visual connectivity. Again, the vertical circulation is really a key component in activating the building. We always try to locate collaboration or gathering space around around stairs like this in order to enliven and activate the zones. A lot of transparency. You can see views into grad student spaces on the left and environmental labs on the right. And then the building was also conceived of as a learning tool for the engineering departments. We kind of revealed the structural design of the stairs. So the structural members that are used to build up the stairs, those are all sized to express the structural forces that are being placed on each of those members. The image in the middle, upper middle, that is an area in the lower portion of the building where all of the building systems are color coded in that area, so students can learn the difference between, chilled water and steam and ductwork and electrical and just all of the different building systems that are used inside the building. There's a structural component that is displayed on the right, and each of these have little placards that explain the significance and interest in each one. And then finally, in the lower right, the site hydrology is expressed through a series of step pools that replicate a natural stream. So then we'll move on to the neighbor building beside Fitts-Woolard, which is James B. Hunt Jr. Library. This was a project that we completed with the international design firm Stohetta in 2013. It's 5 levels, one of which is the mezzanine. It's around 235,000 square feet, which is essentially about the same size as Fitts-Woolard. It houses both the library, but also the Institute for Emerging Issues, which is a think tank organization that was started by Governor Hunt in the early 2000s. And then I think one of the really unique aspects of the building, beyond just the design of the building, is also how it houses the books in the building. Typically, libraries have a lot of bookshelves. Well, this one is very different, so we'll get to that in a minute. Again, back to kind of connecting to the broader campus. This is the entry from Partners Way. Fitts-Woolard is just to the left of the screen. As you enter into that level 1 lobby, you're presented with a really striking yellow stair, and that will be a theme throughout this project. The stairs were really used as a thread through the building that connect from this level 1 entry up and through all of the library spaces, and then culminate at a rooftop terrace. So we'll see how that kind of works its way through the building. The other thing you're presented with as you enter into level 1 lobby is what we call the book bot. And you can see through those large windows, looks like a series of metal boxes on racks. So that is the automatic storage and retrieval system. That's where all of the books, well, almost all of the books in the building are stored. It can house approximately 2 million volumes. I think they're up to about 1.5 million volumes currently in the building. But this at the time was really unique. It was one of only about 4 of these systems that were in use in a library in the United States at the time. I think now there's a couple dozen in place, but it was really unique at that time. And then this is a view inside the book bot, and you can see there are these large robotic arms. Those are the yellow, vertical yellow things in the middle. Those move up and down these aisles and pull the metal boxes off of the shelves and bring those metal boxes to the librarian, where they then can access and pull the books that have been requested. So moving up to the oval entry on level 2. As you go into the building, you immediately go into the lobby, and there's a gallery associated with the Institute for Emerging Issues. Turn left and you move into the library spaces. On the left there, you can see the technology showcase, and that's a place where the library puts on display the kind of devices that they provide for students. So kind of think of it kind of like an Apple store. Beyond the technology showcase is the large reading lounge. This is really the first kind of public zone or place in the building where you can stop and rest and collaborate or throughout the building. There's a series of these large digital monitors or displays that are used in kind of sharing information, but also it can be used by students and faculty for specific projects. I think one of the things that a lot of people find really interesting about Hunt Library are just all the chairs, all the different kinds of chairs that are in the building. There are in fact over 75 unique types of chairs, and they are in over 100 different colors. This is the quiet reading room, which is probably one of the most familiar kind of spaces in a library. It's quiet, it's wood lined, there are books visible, so it really kind of feels like a traditional library, at least in this part of the building. And then it's surrounded, you can see in the upper right hand corner, the space is surrounded by a series of group study rooms, each one having access to technology for collaboration. There's another yellow stair taking us up to the mezzanine. It was really important, we thought, to try to activate these stairs and use these stairs as a place not only to move up and down in the building, but also to rest or meet your peers, your friends. So up on the mezzanine level, there are a series of technology spaces similar or an example of one is the game lab on the left, and then again, a whole series of these group study spaces. And there are different kinds of study spaces throughout the building. Some are enclosed, open, which you can see down in the lower right. So the next set of stairs taking us up to level 4 with a view back down through the atrium down into the large reading room. You can see some of those 75 different chairs. This floor is really dominated by a lot of technology spaces. This being the teaching and visualization lab. This is a 360-degree immersive space. Next to that is the creativity studio, which has a series of movable and reconfigurable walls that can be rearranged in any configuration for depending on the type of study or research that's going on. Again, a set of yellow stairs taking us finally up to the 5th floor, where you empty out into the skyline reading room. This is a wood-lined room. It's another quiet reading space, but it can also be converted into an event space in evenings. And then just adjacent to the skyline reading room, you can exit out onto this really lovely terrace that has views out and over the campus. You can see Lake Raleigh there in the background. Really beautiful sunsets. And that is the end of the tour. And I think we have a few minutes left, so I guess we'll open it up for questions, comments.
Thank you, Shann. And Don, that was very interesting. I learned so much about these buildings, and it was great to hear the design process and the thoughts that went into designing them. All right, time for some questions. John M asked, did Sass Hall replace Riddick Hall?
I believe that's right. I'm trying to, so 2005, I think that's right. Isn't that right, Shann?
Yeah, right. The
piece of Riddick Hall.
Riddick was the old stadium, and
right. Yeah.
Once the stadium moved out to Carter Finley, I think they used part of the remaining kind of structure of the stadium for offices and various functions. But yes, that was torn down as part of Sass Hall.
All right, and are the newer buildings on the older campus using solar energy and other renewable energy?
Great question. These two projects did not. I mean, I know NC State's very committed to a sustainable future and trying to use renewable energy where possible, where the budget allows it. We try to. I think the goal is to have LEED silver on all projects, so there's always a push for energy performance, but solar panels are just one of the tools that we have at our disposal, so we try to use them whenever possible. I don't know about the rest of the campus and which buildings have solar panels, but actually Hunt Library has some. Yeah,
Hunt has solar hot water panels, so it's not creating energy, but it is heating the water for the building. And I just learned the other day that Fitts-Woolard is going to be installing a solar array on the roof. So we designed it to be able to accommodate a future PV array, photovoltaic array. And I believe the university has, maybe they have a donor or someone that's going to be providing the funding for that. But I did hear that that's going in on the roof of Fitts-Woolard soon.
Great question. Thanks for asking that.
Yeah.
So Linnell P asked, are the windows in Park Shops the original windows?
Great question. They are the original frames. We replaced the single pane glass with an insulated unit for each of the panes. Yeah, that was something we really thought was important to keep the character of the building, but improve the energy performance as much as possible.
That makes sense. Do you guys know why are most buildings on our campus brick?
That's a great question. Well, it's very common in North Carolina. That's probably one reason. I noticed that Pat Rand was on.
Yeah, that's right. Pat Rand's on here.
Pat may actually know the answer to that, but my sense is probably because it's a very common material for buildings in North Carolina, particularly when the college or the university was established in the 1800s.
It's cost effective. People know how to build it, and it's very, very durable. It's just a great kind of long-term material.
Great. Why are the stairs in Hunt yellow? I find it an interesting choice of colors.
Great question. Well, they are yellow because we wanted them to be very kind of visually attracting, like sort of draw you to them. And yellow pops out, right? It's a very kind of strong color. Someone might say, well, why didn't you use red? Because you're on NC State's campus. And interestingly enough, campus standards do not allow you to use red extensively in buildings unless they are athletic buildings. So we had to use red, kind of limited use of red in our building. So yellow was kind of like the next, really kind of bright color. Great question though.
David D asked, Don used the term activate several times. Can you talk about what that means?
Right. I saw that question, then I realized Shann was saying that word every other sentence as well. Yeah, we like to use the word activate. We really just mean to put people in those places, and that can be through a circulation element, so having a public path that activates because it's putting people there, or it can be a program that activates if it's a coffee shop or a high traffic space. It just means, where do you want to put people? And that's what we typically use, how we use the word activate. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Wilma P, class of 67, asks, I also would like to hear some comments about the old Harrison Hall and the land that's now there.
Harrelson?
The circular.
The circular building?
The popular one, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not an expert on that issue. All I know is that it was torn down to make way for the new integrative sciences building, or the opportunity for it, and it was torn down, I think, because it was so unpopular.
I mean, that building was really challenging because I mean, most of you probably know it was round. It was a round shape, and it had a lot of the floors inside were sloping. They were kind of auditorium style classrooms, even the small classrooms. So really, really challenging to renovate and convert those kind of buildings. It was so specific. It really would be difficult to take that and convert it to a more modern classroom building. I think that's one of the reasons. I also think I heard there were maybe some structural issues or foundation issues, but I don't know for sure on that one. It is soon to be replaced by a new integrated science building.
All right, so I think we have time for one more question. Let's see. Someone would like to know why Fitts-Woolard was put next to Hunt when the rest of Centennial is corporate brick.
I don't quite understand the question. Do you understand?
They're asking about the transition between maybe the choice of materials. How do you handle the exterior skin to complement Hunt, but also complement the oval architecture?
Yes.
Yeah, if that was the question. So it was when we designed Hunt, one of the things we were asked to do was to create an iconic building, something that was very unique and different to NC State. So you probably noticed there's no red brick on that building. Although interestingly enough, there's one brick hidden inside the building somewhere. The contractor did that kind of as a joke. So anyhow, that Hunt Library doesn't have any red brick. the rest of Centennial obviously does have a lot of brick. And so one of the things we were trying to achieve with Fitts-Woolard was to use that building as an architectural bridge between the architectural style of Hunt Library and then the more traditional brick architecture of the rest of campus. So if you kind of look at the images, you'll see some similarities between both Hunt Library, but also the older buildings as well.
Great, thank you. All right, we have actually, I lied, we have one more. And that is there going to be a tunnel for traffic under Western Boulevard? As I find it's hard to believe that that has not been done yet due to safety concerns, due to the traffic between the old and new campus.
Shann, you know, I mean, I don't think there's a tunnel, but wasn't there a plan for a transit, like a light rail?
There was, yeah, long ago, there was going to be a light rail system connecting the two campuses. And I don't think that that's ever going to happen. I do know that there are self-driving cars on Centennial campus. If you've been out there recently, there are these kind of small automated vehicles that kind of do a loop around Centennial. But speaking of bridge, I think, or tunnel, I do believe that there's plans to eventually connect over the railroad track, so connect North Campus to Central Campus by way of the new Tally Center. If you're familiar with that building, there's this kind of conical shape at the entry, and that is set up structurally to build a bridge that connects over the train tracks and to, I think, maybe the new integrated science building that's going to be in the old Harrelson Hall location.
Great, thank you. So we're sorry we can't get to everyone's questions today. They were all great questions though. But we'd like to thank Shane and Don for putting together this great program for us and teaching us more about our wonderful campus architecture. Our next program is going to be on November 16th, and that is the history of Centennial Campus, which pairs very nicely with what we just heard today. We also are going to drop a program survey in the chat, so please feel free to fill that out. Yeah, and thank you everyone again for joining us today. Have a great day.